16 years, and we've gone from a cable business, a U.S. cable business, to the leader internationally. We added sports, we added free-to-air, and we've always owned our IP. Diversified and well-positioned.
This is truly an incredible, juicy story you are witnessing with a front seat. Hollywood history. Oh my God!
Welcome back, everybody. So now that we've seen the Warner Media Discovery merger pretty much come to a close, what does this mean for DC Film? As we know, the new boss in charge of Warner Media Discovery is the very capable CEO, David Zaslav. In his previous position as the head of Discovery Media, Zaslav was able to transform the channel into a seriously profitable company within a few years. Zaslav has also been consolidating positions and responsibilities with the new merger. Longtime executives like CEO of Warner Brothers, Ann Sarnoff, and CEO of Warner Media, Jason Kilar, are rumored to leave the new company, Warner Media Discovery, soon after everything is finalized. With the two companies merging into this mega company, what does this mean for DC Film? Currently, DC Media is all over the place. There are some remnants of the DC EU with the Wonder Woman and Aquaman franchises, with Aquaman set to release a sequel in March of 2023. There are also post-Justice League characters like Shazam and Black Adam. They will be releasing movies in the 2022 to 2023 season, along with the timeline reset film, The Flash. The film will also introduce a movie version of Supergirl played by Sasha Calle. There is also a Super Pets movie, but that seems to be its own thing, and I'm totally on board with that. I almost forgot there are new prestige films like The Joker and the recently digital release of The Batman. Both films exist in their own universes and do not appear to have any association to a shared universe. According to a The Playlist article, HBO Max Films will also be making a Batgirl and Blue Beetle film. I'm not sure if these will be theatrical films or go straight to the streaming platform. If it is a theatrical release, it will probably have a 45-day run in the theater like the films nowadays. That seems to be the trend moving forward. As for the streaming end of the spectrum, HBO Max also has the hit Peacemaker, based on the character from the 2021 film The Suicide Squad. Titans and Doom Patrol were originally aired on the DC Unlimited platform until they abandoned their streaming content and the shows migrated to HBO Max. Oddly enough, none of these HBO Max shows take place in the same universe. Finally, we have the CW shows, or, if you prefer, the Arrowverse. These include the long-running series like The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, and the, in my opinion, very underrated Superman and Lois, the last one being the best of the group in my opinion. There are many stories and many platforms, and they all tell different stories from one another. Sometimes they have the same characters, sometimes they don't. Some exist in their own universe, but then some of them are shared as well. At some point, Zaslav wants a more cohesive DC media experience. What does that mean exactly? I'm not 100% sure yet, but maybe we can figure that out together. The new Warner Media Discovery also wants to revitalize iconic characters that have not gotten their proper treatment. Specifically, the Big Blue Boy Scout that launched the whole superhero genre. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Superman. Does this mean Henry Cavill is returning? That hasn't been answered yet. But it does mean Zaslav wants more Superman movies. Reportedly, Zaslav also really liked the Joker and the Batman, and wants to create projects that are more like that as well, which is both shrewd and interesting. Another aspect that Zaslav wants to see is an executive that can oversee the entire line of DC projects. Somebody that can handle multiple characters and storylines and hopefully bring him into some sort of cohesive finish. Basically, Zaslav wants a Kevin Feige for DC Films. Of course, Zaslav is not alone in this. Many studios from Lucasfilm, Paramount, Universal, and even the pre-merged Warner Brothers set out on a quest for their own Kevin Feige. The question is, what makes Feige so special? And why do all the studios want one of their own? Because Feige has been able to do what no other film studio has been able to do as of yet. And that is create a shared cinematic universe. Currently, Kevin is also overseeing the content on Disney Plus that will be tied in to the film universe as well. Many have tried, but so far no one has been able to replicate the success that Feige has had with the MCU. One point I think studio executives overlook is the fact that when Marvel Studios began, the characters they had access to were basically B-list superheroes. Prior to the 2008 Iron Man, any notion of the Avengers characters carrying one film, let alone a franchise, was almost laughable. The reason for this is that studios like Sony Pictures and 20th Century Fox had already acquired the most popular characters from Marvel. Now we're talking about pretty much the X-Men and Spider-Man. From the late 90s and the early 2000s, it was thought that X-Men and Spider-Man were the only viable properties for film projects. Why does this matter? Because when Marvel Studios started out with Iron Man, the stakes were relatively low. But as a result, the pre-Disney Marvel Studios had a lot of freedom. This enabled Feige, as a producer of Iron Man, to have a great degree of control over the project. Another Feige practice that is now commonplace, but a little revolutionary at the time, was to hire talented directors that flew a little under the radar for the most part. Case in point, Feige hired the very talented Jon Favreau to direct Iron Man and Iron Man 2. At that point, Favreau had not directed a movie of that size and budget, but Feige and the Marvel Studios had faith in him. From the first Iron Man movie, Feige has been able to leverage his success to have a Phase 1 culmination in the 2012 Avengers movie. By the time Disney came into the picture, a roadmap had been drawn by Feige, and of course, the rest is history. Let us look into the path that DC has taken. In 2013, it was announced that the follow-up to the 2011 movie Man of Steel would be Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. From that film, the seeds would be planted for a DC shared cinematic universe. The plan was to do a shared Avengers-style movie with the Justice League, which would then spin off single movies. Prior to the release of BVS, the Kevin Feige of DC Film appeared to be Zack Snyder, at least creatively speaking. But after the critical and box office disappointment of said film, Warner Brothers decided to rethink this decision. Soon afterwards, in 2016, renowned comic book writer and DC Film COO Jeff Johns had been tasked with running the DC EU with Walter Hamada, replacing him in 2018. Both had mixed success and a lot of unwanted attention brought to DC. Under all the management changes, somehow the Justice League and Suicide Squad were released, both having disappointing results, along with the very successful Wonder Woman and Aquaman solo movies. Shazam and Birds of Prey soon followed, with the latter film having mixed results. All the movies past the Justice League displayed very little reference to that movie, and very little reference to a shared universe in general. Instead of the MCU building upon each movie, the DCEU were distancing themselves from the Justice League and BVS. So who can be the new Kevin Feige for DC film? Given the immense responsibilities for a Kevin Feige type, it's no easy feat. But let's look at the possible candidates. If Warner Brothers Discovery wants proven executives, there are a lot to choose from. First being former 20th Century Fox head Stacy Snyder. She's got a solid track record for movies like some of the X-Men films, Planet of the Apes, along with a critical darling, Bohemian Rhapsody. When Disney bought 20th Century Fox, Snyder found herself on the wrong end of the deal. So it would be pretty easy for Warner Brothers Discovery to pick her up. Next, we have the current CEO of Lionsgate Entertainment, John Feltheimer. He could be a pretty good choice as well, since he greenlit projects like The Hunger Games and La La Land. Feltheimer also grew Lionsgate from a Canadian independent film company to a solid player in Hollywood. I'm not sure if Feltheimer would consider it, but it really would be an interesting opportunity for both him and Warner Brothers Discovery. Another option is to hire a proven showrunner to try and be the Kevin Feige of DC. At one point, Warner Brothers had hired the company Bad Robot to produce content for them. This may not be a horrible move, since J.J. Abrams would be part of the deal. Now, love him or hate him, J.J. has made some very smart moves in his career and would probably do a pretty good job in a position like this. Or Warner Brothers could try and poach a guy who created the MCU from Disney. Now, I'm not talking about Kevin Feige this time around, but another key figure in the early success of that studio, and that is none other than Jon Favreau. He's got a proven track record with the early MCU films, as well as his Star Wars Disney Plus shows. These shows currently consist of The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett. Many would say Favreau has brought a lot of the magic back to Star Wars, and I would be hard-pressed to disagree with that. Who knows, maybe he could bring some of the magic back to DC as well. Now, an interesting choice could also be Taika Waititi. Taika has a wild imagination and a solid box office performance, with movies like Jojo Rabbit and Thor Ragnarok. Waititi would put a different spin on projects and probably infuse a lot of humor into the films. But in a way, I kind of hope he remains on the path he's currently on. I love his creativity too much to be stuck behind a desk making executive decisions. Of course, Warner Brothers already has somebody on the payroll that is probably their best bet in overseeing projects, and that of course would be James Gunn. The guy put Guardians of the Galaxy on the map and successfully turned around the Suicide Squad franchise with his film and an even better spin-off series, The Peacemaker. Also, Gunn was originally tapped by Kevin Feige himself to oversee the cosmic aspects of the MCU with the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. It kind of makes me wonder if Gunn being let go from Marvel is the reason why the MCU decided to go toward the multiverse instead of space. Gunn seems to have pretty good instincts when it comes to film, And he also has that dark edge that DC Films likes. Honestly, I think Warner Media could do a lot worse than James Gunn. From what I've read in Variety and comic book resources, Zaslav wants to model DC films after Marvel Studios. So this may or may not lead to a rebranding of DC film into DC Studios. Zaslav wants all DC material, including television and streaming, along with the theatrical releases, to be under one brand. This would actually make a lot of sense. One big question would be, where does the Snyderverse fit in all of this? To be honest, I don't think we know yet. I suspect things will probably be like what we have going on now, with characters like Aquaman and Wonder Woman remaining viable, and others like Superman and Batfleck being MIA for the time being. At least until whoever they decide is put in charge of DC Studios and decides a course of action. Could this require a new timeline? Probably. If Zaslav wants a more cohesive DC entertainment experience, then I think the first thing to go would probably have to be the Arrowverse. Shows like Arrow, Supergirl, and Black Lightning have finished their runs, with The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, and Superman and Lois still airing. I almost forgot, I think Stargirl might still be on as well, but I'm not sure. I personally think this would be a needed move since there are multiple characters in the Arrowverse that are in the films as well. And truth be told, with the exception of Superman and Lois, most of the remaining shows have pretty much jumped the shark a while ago. As far as HBO Max, well, that's a little tougher because it's got shows like Doom Patrol and Titans, and of course the animated Harley Quinn show. And they have a pretty dedicated following. Also, I really hope Peacemaker survives any of the overhaul because I really like that show. Of course, the biggest question would be, will it work? Yes, I think that the changes Zaslav wants to introduce really could work if given a chance. If there is a creative type in charge that has the best interest of the fans instead of his or her own best interest, then yeah, I think this shot at reforming DC into a viable competitor to the MCU really might go somewhere. There, of course, will be some tremendous growing pains as some of the characters may change casting or backstories to try and achieve some of the uniformity to this new shared film universe. But in the end, it may be needed in order to get what Zaslav intends to do. But ultimately, I think it would be worth it. Of course, those are just my opinions, and I would love to hear yours. Feel free to express yourself in my comments section. Also, if you haven't given a like or sub, please do so, but only if you want to. I'm not going to try to force you. I'm not like that. As always, fare thee well, my friends, and take care. Cue the music.